Yes. So I have an agenda. It's very simple. What, demo, how, and when. So I think we'll get through this in the 20 minutes we have at our disposal, and hope we'll have some time for questions as well. So as Alan said, I'm Thomas, I'm CTO at Enonic, and if you haven't met me before, come over and have a chat and share your concerns or your dreams with me. So what? And I'll start with that because what is React4XP? And to kind of make that clear, I'll just briefly talk about the React evolution, so to say. It started way back where you could build micro apps, basically small parts of your web page. You could do some front-end tricks there, and then the SPAs, single page applications, became popular, so you could take over the whole site, so to say. However, that wasn't really fast and not very useful if you were building a website. Basically too slow and too many things happening. Don't want to see the loading page, right, on your website. So enter server-side rendering, which is basically giving you the opportunity to run React on the server, typically combined with the front end. And this is where you want to be if you want to build a proper website with React, not just an application. So there are many different ways of doing this, and then there are some really popular things that have come out. So you have something called Next.js, which is kind of the go-to tool. And yeah, before I go there, also mention we have React components, which you can use regardless of kind of the approach you're doing here. So that's a standard NPM that will help you out with standard Enonic things like rich text, etc. So as an XP developer, I'd say to simplify, you have two ways of going if you want to do server-side rendered React. And that's Next.js, and there's React4XP. So basically, React4XP is kind of an alternative to Next.js. So the question is, why would you need that? Because this is like, oh, it has all the bells and whistles and the latest, greatest of everything. But there are many reasons, and I'll go through a few things here to compare the two. So the first one there is probably interesting. To run Next.js, you will need to run or host a Node.js application and manage that outside of XP, obviously. React4XP runs natively on XP, so you can host everything, for instance, in Enonic Cloud. Both support server-side rendering. Both have continuous builds. When it comes to accessing the content, let's say both need content from XP, right? One of them will use GraphQL because it's remote, it's hosted outside, and the other one has direct access to XP's backend. So there's a, let's say, closer connection there. Also the preview, slightly more complex because it's an integration again. And the preview is native in React4XP. Same with the logging on and security, a bit more complex. And then page cache and lots of advanced stuff in Next. But as long as you're running an XP app, you also have a Booster now that will give you super fast pages, and they are even persistent over restarts of your entire platform. And then finally, an interesting thing is like Vigdis just showed you, that there are apps on the Enonic market that can extend your site. For instance, the SEO, meta fields app, sitemap, and the security header share. And those work automatically with React4XP, where if you use Next, you'll have to do some more coding and set it up yourself there. So that's basically like the overview. Of course, for Next.js, we have a standard integration as well. So it's called NextXP. You can use that. So absolutely works. So both of these options are available depending on your use case. What's new in React4XP 6? Because those of you that have been using version 5, they're probably curious about this. And the first point here, I just call it headless. It's because you can now build and maintain the React4XP as a separate frontend, detached from your schemas, just like you would with another frontend. So why is that interesting? Well, it gives you the ability, for instance, to reuse the frontend across multiple other applications, which is handy, I think, and it can make it easier to maintain and more complex. But you can also bundle everything like we've always done. There's also a new, let's say, main router. So you get a new layer before the traditional page controllers. We call it app.ts and TSX, but this also adds a new level of control where you, as the developer, have more control over the routing and what happens with each request. Also, another change is that the old version used to basically have many small React apps on each page. So every part you made, everything you made would have a separate small React application. With version 6, there's just one React app, which is obviously more handy. And I should mention, together with that, you don't combine React4XP 6 with other things like Thymeleaf. So everything is React. That's important. That's also, let's say, this is like a highly wanted feature from many. I've heard it many times. We have standardized on using CSS modules. I think you can use other stuff as well, but at least it's out of the box. There's also something called the data fetcher and the component registry, and I'll show you this later. And an improved new build system and TypeScript. So that's kind of the highlights. So I'll show it in practice then. So what we can do, we can create a sandbox, and we'll use the headless movie database template. Yes, start it. Okay, so over here, and this is basically our tutorial and our demo. So everyone can, when it's released, everyone can use what I'm showing you here. And it's a repo on GitHub where I can do basically do Enonic dev. And then it will start, yeah, I want to use the demo sandbox. So now we have the stuff booting up, and I can go to localhost. Let's see, here's my sandbox. And I'll go to Content Studio. And it pre-populated with some sample content. So people have probably seen this before. It's just a set of dummy content. And it has kind of a built-in preview here, right? I can see articles listing here. No preview here. Persons. Yeah, there's some preview here. Okay. So what I can do now, I can edit the site, and the new application has been built. So that's my demo of React4XP. Apply and save. And now it should hook in and just take over the rendering. So there you see where I have the data and the schema from other applications, and then I just wrap the new frontend on top of it. And it works just like you would expect with other sites built on XP. That's worth a clap, I think. That's a new feature. Yeah. So, but that's a bit exciting to get to that level and make XP apps work more like, let's say, traditional headless approach, even if you don't need to go all the way. So let's see what happens with the rest of stuff now. So now we can see, we can navigate into articles. Actually, oh, I wasn't. Let's see. Oh, it worked just before I did the demo, but yeah, persons. And I think even the playlists now have a preview. Yeah. So as you can see, can just apply and write my own front end and put it on top of an existing site or existing data set. Let me show you just very quickly, show some coding examples as well. Let's take this one. Oh, yeah, okay. But okay, I'll see if I can, maybe there's something with the compiling stuff. Let's see, if I have, yeah, it's running here. I'll try to change something in the code. So the heading, so here you have a super simple component which prints the heading. And let's, if this works, then we'll be happy for that. But basically, a change in code will just instantly make the compiler trigger. And yeah, at least here, I think this is in use. Yeah, you can see that it changed to H2, and I can change back to H1 just so that you see that it is instantly building. Just, yeah, at least that, yeah, there were probably some build problem. So it's running, when I'm using this now, everything is running in dev mode. So it might be something with that. Anyway, that was just a brief look at it and the structure and everything. You'll find everything in the documentation, of course, if you want to try it out. And I'll go back to the slides. So how does it work? And the trick is we use a catch-all mapping. So when you deploy this app and hook it to your site, the catch-all mapping will get the request and take over from the, let's say, fallback rendering, the standard rendering. And it will start invoking a file called app.ts. And this is the bootstrapping file. And of course, everything is in your code, so you can go in and look at it and change it if you want to change the behavior. Basically, what this does is it gets the contextual content and then starts sending that to something called the data fetcher, which will get all the data needed for that page. It will then go to the app.tsx, which is the, let's say, root controller for React, which boots off everything. And then goes to something called component registry, which will then render all the components that are on this page. And finally, the response processor kicks in. And this is where, like, for instance, the security headers got added. So that means you can do things that will also enrich the final HTML of the site or page, just like people are used to. And finally, it's delivered to the client, which will then kick off the client side of React. So the red ones here are basically kind of server-side standard XP things. And then the blue ones are React. But when you're working with this, you will almost only have to deal with these two. So I guess 90+% of work is going to happen here. So let's have a look at two examples. So as I mentioned, the data fetcher does the job of getting the data you need, right? So you might have a bunch of different components on a page. It could be like the heading, the article list, whatever you might come up with. And each of these needs data to render properly. And in order to be efficient and execute only what you need, we have made a concept that lets you define what we call a data processor. And as you can see, it just defines this and does a simple get data from this component, get the heading, and the display name if that exists, blah, 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 and then returns a value. So, okay, it sends the heading. And then that's the actually data fetcher. And then the second part there is you have to also register it. So when you register it, you will tell, yeah, it's this, sorry, it's a bit close. Yeah, it's the heading processor here we want to register. And it will then take the file, get the heading processor, and register it, and say it will work for the part called com Enonic app HMDB heading. So here's where the match occurs. So we basically say if there's a heading on this page, get the data for it. And this will be used later when we come to the component part. And we get there very quickly. The component registry basically is the same. You can define a React component like this, export the heading, and return some interesting results like this, the h1 and the value of the prop, which was fetched by the data fetcher or the data processor. And you do the same. You register this to work for the same part, right? Enonic app heading. So this means that there's some magic built into into the data processor layer or the data fetcher and the component registry. And these two work together. So what you have to do is essentially build all the different components and the fetchers for them. There's also a common data fetcher. So if you have data that should be shared across multiple components, you can use the common processor. So like if you want to have, let's say, a footer or some menu stuff or anything you want to share which is outside of these maybe as well, right? For every page, we want to have the menu. Does it make sense? Yeah. And if any of you have used our Next.js integration, you'll see it's pretty much the same principle. And over time, we'll align these even more closely. So the ideas and the concepts are the same. So when? This June. So we're wrapping up as we speak. There's a few more details that need to be in place, but we will announce an RC1 when it's ready and then release the 6.0.0 by the end of this month. And certainly we need your feedback if you experience some interesting things or stuff isn't working as you expect, or you're happy with it, just give it a go and let us know what you think. My view on this is that this is basically going to take over from the Thymeleaf and the other, let's say, more simple frameworks, as this gives you a more control, more modern approach, and we think it's pretty neat to work with as well. So how do you use it? Well, this is basically the command to get going, and then you do the Enonic dev, just like anything else on our market and App Store. And the docs will be on the developer portal. And if you're upgrading, which I'm sure is interesting, we have written a detailed upgrade notice. And the main thing to know is that the old regions handling is no longer going to work. If you want to keep that for some reason, you have to port it forward yourself. But the whole idea is now to only use React for everything, right? Not to mix it with different technologies. So the controllers generally just need to be rewritten into data fetcher. So that's where you will place them. You will take them out of the current location and register them in the data fetcher instead. And you, of course, have to have some new wrappers, but essentially you're getting some props and you're feeding it to the data fetcher. And what previously was called entries, you now move it to component registry. So that's kind of the very short takeaway. And our recommended approach is actually just build a brand new app, copy over your front-end code, and migrate it and put it on top of the existing site. Because then you can work with it without dealing with all the other quirks you might have in the existing app. And then you also get the new build system and everything out of the box. And yeah, as I mentioned, you'll get the notes in detail how to proceed to upgrade. Okay, so final slide. What will happen after this? Because we're not finished. We will merge the data fetcher and the component registry when Graal.js is available. It's not going to be a big change, so to say, but it's just a fewer concept to deal with. We will provide the integration with Guillotine, so you can do GraphQL queries as you would do JavaScript, if you prefer that. And we're looking into other things like link elements, prefetching, what's it called, hot module reloads, speed up the developer process, and other things. So here we basically need your feedback on what's important to you. And that's it. I guess there might be some questions here.
People are overwhelmed.
Yeah.
By next, by the way, we mean React4XP 7, so you don't have to worry about
it's pun intended.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bobby.
It's like a React version come into play into this, like React 19, right?
Yeah, so it will be React 18 when we launch it, and we will upgrade to 19 later. But yeah, we just decided not to do it right now at the end. So
basically too many breaking changes in one version, so we decided to keep it on 18 for now.
Yeah, but you pretty much control it yourself as well, but then there's probably more changes coming. I don't know the details of 19, 18. Other questions?
Will the speed of rendering more quickly than now?
Yeah, you saw it here, right? It's from my experience, it's very fast, and we're also deploying this on our market. So when we go live here, Enonic market will also be using React4XP. From what I've seen, it's really fast.
It's much faster than it used to be.
Yeah.
It's definitely much faster to build things.
And also remember Booster. And this is general. If you're building sites running on Enonic and you haven't used Booster, and I'm talking public sites, have a look at it, because you can get 10 to, I don't know, 100 times more performance by installing Booster. Yep.
Just a quick question about the component registry. So when you add the new XP app with React4XP, you take over the rendering. What happens if I have another app that has art or has something that I've used? Is that still going to be rendered, or do I need to implement that as well?
Yeah, no. So as long as let's say you hit the React4XP app, nothing of your old rendering will exist.
Okay.
Yeah, so you have to migrate. You can't have, let's say, and that's kind of intentional as well, because mixing, it's been possible, right? I could make, let's say, a part in some kind of technology here, and then the page in something else, and then, oh, what about the CSS and all this? So by bundling everything that is front-end into one app, you get full control over that. And I think that's actually a better way of managing this as well. But you can then split, of course, stuff you can split it into modules or libraries or whatever if you want to reuse across apps.
So, for instance, if I've been using the social and that macro application, that won't work.
No. So here you have to make sure you implement the rendering the way you want it. But yeah, or you can use the macros, everything backend, everything in Content Studio will work, all your content types, all of that will work, but the rendering itself must be done here. But the apps I mentioned, those that like the security headers, that just contribute some additional markup, those are fine, though they are not basically a UI.